Thank you so much for being here, David. Really excited to talk about your book, Shallow Ends. A little bit about David. So, David James Keaton's award-winning fiction has been widely published. His first collection of short stories, Fish Bites Cop, was awarded Best Fiction Collection of the Year by This Is Horror. And his latest novel, Shallow Ends, is available through Podium Audio. His previous novel, Head Cleaner, will be reissued by Datura Books in 2026. Hope I said that right.
Yep.
He lives and teaches in California. Oh, perfect. It's like we practiced. Cool. Thank you, David. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, it's good to online meet you, although I've met you, but
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Meet again. Meet
you've
again.
got a much better background there. I got to figure out where to record in this house. We just
It,
moved.
oh, you did?
Yeah, so we've got this not sure where to do anything. First it was in the kitchen, now I'm kind of in the corner of the bedroom. I need like a den with the
Mm.
rolling mirror and the bookshelves. That's kind of what
Yeah,
it's
all
like.
the things. Well, this is my one good wall, right?
That's a
But
good wall.
you at least have your obligatory shelf of books, so you've
It's
ticked all
true.
the
I
boxes
need
you
a
need.
plant. I don't have a plant,
Mm.
but I just gotta get this little best purchase I ever made. This little squid fan.
Yeah, I'm sure
Should have
that
made
comes
it,
in handy.
but
Yeah,
no plants yet.
no plants to happen. Well, I think it'd be great. I've got some questions, and this is such a surreal novel that I'm really excited to hear your thoughts on it. And I think before we get into it, it'd be cool to hear you read a bit from it. Did you want to read
Sure.
part of it? Cool.
Yeah, let me I'll pull up the opening on the screen. It'll probably be easier than reading it from the book.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough.
Okay. I haven't read in a while, so I remember that the best way to do it is to read it once, get to know it, and then read it again. So I
Yeah.
didn't do that. So this is going
Well,
to sound like this is going to be like the undergrad reading where I just sort of I'm going to monotone it.
power through it. Power through
Okay.
it.
So and a reading is not going well when you have to explain anything, and maybe a book isn't going well if you have to explain the very first page. So I'm going to explain the very first page. Big fire truck is rolling up to a bar. Okay. So there we go. That's it. The monstrous vehicle was rumbling around the corner, huge wheels lunging with every pothole as it thundered towards her like a drunken parade. The teeth of its grille gleaming, red, white, and blue sirens blazing, and the waves of music from the speakers throbbing deep in her chest, like palpitations as it continued to lurch and lumber to her curb. A tattered and limp American flag waving feebly from the railing as the heads turned, confused by the contradiction, the promise of rescue and disruption. Noxious exhaust and alcohol fumes preceded the beast, and as soon as she stood in its unyielding headlights, the grotesque patriotism and boozy promise of such a spectacle somehow simultaneously terrified her, while also inducing a queasy excitement to get this crazy show on the road as soon as possible. Where's the fire? Someone laughed, running up from behind the truck. Where's the party? Came the response over her shoulder. This is the worst idea I've ever had, she thought. But the night's still young, and so were they. 8 hours earlier, when the dying honeybee fell from the ceiling, Angie's last class of the semester still had a half hour to go, but she knew she'd lost them for good. Her students howled as the dazed intruder dropped and began drunkenly rebounding off their desk legs like a buzzing bumpy car, and she ran to open the nearest window to hopefully steer it outside. This is great because I'm reading about a disruptive classroom, and I don't know if you can hear my daughter going nuts outside. Actually makes sense. Um, a fresh gust of post thunderstorm breeze should have calmed everyone down a bit, but they'd already been wound up so tight watching a countdown to summer on the wall all day, almost as closely as she had. Even before their surprised guest turned her classroom into a free for all, tensions were high with her students locked in a fierce debate regarding Lord of the Flies and how they'd never succumb to such savagery. They'd almost come to blows at one point without any sense of irony, which meant that the honeybee, currently spiraling down into the center of the circle like a helicoptering maple pod, was goosing an already unstable argument straight over the cliff of national discourse. Sorry, rational discourse. That's a Freudian slip right there. Some students laughed and dove for cover. Some dug through backpacks for overpriced EpiPens, and the rest pressed in closer. Angie's best students tried to shield the bee from the boots of the bullies, always intent on hastening the demise of anything vulnerable. "I'm Lord of the Bees," Jack shouted, the first to try to stomp it into oblivion. But before his heel could come down, Angie was standing over him with two fists full of his soda-stained soccer jersey. "Do not do that," she said with a calm authority that shocked both of them, and only half of the class dared to laugh. "Let me go," Jack said, his grin morphing into a grimace. Though they were both technically adults, Angie knew manhandling a student would likely lead to a sit down with her department chair, or at least the loss of her hard-earned chili pepper on ratemyprofessor.com. But today was the last day of class, a good day not to care about such things. The day before spring break is supposed to be fun, goddammit, she thought, staring down the kid in her clutches. It had been fun for a while anyway. That morning, she'd let the students indulge in YouTube clips of fictional classrooms and films, springboarding from their previous activity of analyzing their room as a text. Dangerous Minds, Goodwill Huntings, and Dead Poet Society seemed to be favorites, the last two especially. Just the sight of Robin Williams' benevolent goblin face got the kids very excitable, even if he wasn't particularly funny in these movies. But they did understand that this man was seemingly scientifically engineered for humor, leaving mugging gaps in his delivery where they could react, that universally recognized pause indicating that anything resembling a joke may have occurred. And they always filled that space eagerly. And the honeybee seemed to represent one of those conspicuous pauses, the disruption of a routine. And as the film-going world had been trained to do, they filled any vacuum with aimless, youthful energy. Miraculously, Angie had time to consider all this as she yoinked Jack up by the sticky handle of his jersey, mildly surprised by both her strength and his lack of density. When it came to fulfilling Angie's assignments for looking for visual arguments in the film clips without getting stuck on plot, Jack was the worst. And she got more tired of him as the semester wore on. It was just another reminder that though college freshmen were already drinking, driving, and presumably fucking with some dexterity, they were still kids where it counted, with attention spans as fleeting as a mayfly or a poisoned honeybee. Even before today, she'd felt her control slipping as she understood the bee as much as the book were excuses for them to riot. She chided herself on not realizing any kid named Jack would push every bad faith argument to absolve the evil deeds of his fictional counterpart. And just like there was no apparently visual representation of a realistic classroom in the history of cinema, there were thousands of bad Jacks in postmodernist literature, as well as the back rows of schoolhouses. But grabbing a kid was crossing the line. She honestly wanted to make the most of her last day with them, and if pressed, would have admitted to being relieved by the interruption. She loosened her grip on Jack's jersey, noting with pride that his sneakers were lowering from his tiptoes back down to his heels. She could smell the onions from the Togo's roast beef sub he'd always brought with him to class, despite the note on her syllabus saying no food unless you bring enough for everyone. He laughed and asked her if she really wanted a room filled with 25 reeking sandwiches. "Because I'll go get them right now," he threatened. Not that they all couldn't use a little more rare meat to make them grow. "The students get smaller every year," she would tell anyone who listened, or anyone who called her short, never admitting that it was likely the ever-tightening squint of her glare which was shaving the inches off of these kids, or possibly the increasing amount of time she spent lecturing rather than questioning, pontificating rather than actually talking, never with eye contact, directing it all at the invisible cloud of collected sighs floating just above their heads, rather than row after row of gape-mouthed faces that this dead air had leaked from. It didn't help that deep down inside, she knew she was no different. They were her, she was them, and they were all just getting worse. Finally free from her grasp, Jack backed up fast to stumble, and he waved over other students to back up too. Angie strode through the gap like the Red Sea and cupped her hands around the writhing bee. It rolled into her palm, lurching and sputtering like a tiny backfiring jalopy, and she held it at arm's length as she walked back to the crisp, breezy section of open window. She knew this effort was futile, not just because the creature's sluggishness betrayed the effects of the pesticides coating the quadrangle. Now that was a space the students liked to read as a text, as flower blinged as a rose parade float as the administration suckered the yearly deluge of awestruck parental campus visits, but because the bee had stung her during this attempted rescue. Effectively gutting itself, as the black stinger still trailing its stomach in bluish-green blood, it pulsed furiously to pump what little venom it could muster into Angie as it slowly lost all remaining muscle control. She felt almost nothing. She would have normally flinched at the sting, but instead she happily took this minuscule pain with a smile, feeling the opposite of animosity towards the insect's gory parting shot at the world, and maybe just not wanting to give any little bastard the satisfaction. Okay, we'll stop there.
It's a great place to stop. Um, I love that opening. It's so visceral. There's so many sensory details in it. And you give us just, that taste of the party bus fire truck and then into her classroom and through it. Um, it's so good. And that visceral sensory detail stays throughout the whole novel, which is
Well,
great.
thanks. I
Yeah.
didn't realize I'd forgotten all of the Lord of the Fly stuff at the beginning.
Yes,
Um,
it's clever. It's funny. Jack.
I was feeling, I forgot that it because it had opened with the class, like extended classroom scene, and
Hmm.
originally, and the editor wanted it to get moving,
Oh,
so he
really?
said, "Bring the fire truck in early." So I cut that classroom scene in half and
Mhm.
had a lot more truck. So it comes back to the truck after that initial little
Yeah,
moment.
yeah.
So I kind of, in my mind, the classroom scene is this casualty that I had to cut.
Oh,
But there's still some of it left. So
it's still there. There's a hint of her.
yeah.
Um, and I feel like it'd be good to talk a little bit about honeybees because there's quite a bit of the honeybee in that scene. And honeybees are really threaded throughout the narrative, but often they're like in danger, they're dying, or they're disappearing altogether. What do you feel they symbolize throughout the novel?
Well, I really like bees. I'm a big fan of bees,
Word.
and I kind of have a lot of we have a lot of bees around here, and so my daughter's going through this moment where she was really into insects and creatures, and then she got stung by one, and so I'm trying like to campaign for the bees because the that impression, that's a terrible last impression
Yeah,
is stung.
that
Um,
betrayal. How could you?
yes, she was betrayed.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's kind of like I want to. I told her because I kept trying to anticipate the sting that would eventually happen because there's so many bees. So I said it's
Mhm.
going to be like a splinter, and apparently it was worse than a splinter. So, but yeah. So anyway, I'm always campaigning for bees around here. But
Yeah.
and I'd also when I started writing this, I'd seen that M. Night Shyamalan movie, The Happening,
I
and
haven't
it has.
seen.
Do you remember that one with the plants?
Mm-mm.
It's pretty
No.
bad. It's notoriously bad. It's considered his worst movie.
Okay.
But it has the opening quote on the screen about if the honeybees died, humanity would only have 5 years to live, and it's attributed to Einstein.
Mm.
Um, that's not a real quote. It's one of those. It's like
Mm.
an meme. It sounded good, and so it gets passed around. So I
Mhm.
wanted to use it, but I wanted to use it as a fake quote, and also use that moment of the idea that that's why this quote endures, even though it's not real, is the fact that that is reasonable as far as how fast things would plummet, but
Mm.
also it's a pretty evocative idea that you know that everything would be relatively normal, but how would things start to devolve?
Yeah.
So that was kind of the one of the main ideas was the bees, like a post bee world is beginning, and
Mm.
things are just kind of off kilter, even though people can't put a real, they can't really put a finger on it what's going on, but something's going wrong. Um, so yeah, they loom over the book like crows, like fuzzy little vultures.
Yeah. Just buzzing. That's interesting. It's interesting, I like what you just said of people don't totally know what's wrong, but something's off kilter, and that's kind of throughout this too. And you've got this cast of characters, and they kind of take turns sharing stories. And there's this idea of like, what are they saying? Is it true or not? There's sometimes the storyteller, there's sometimes the audience. I was going to read this bit on page 151 because it just kind of stood out to me. And it's like two little chunks. Is it okay if I read a chunk of it?
Oh, sure. Yeah, yeah.
I mean, you're on Zoom now, David. No stopping it. Um, but there's this bit where you say, trapped on the back of a fire truck, unable to present any evidence of truth or fiction outside of a missing thumb or floating money, all that remained was the story itself, words. And then it says, as the only remaining representation of their lives, even a fictional narrative would, by default, become their reality. And so there's this big play with like surrealism and reality and what is truth and what isn't. Um, what do you want your readers to take away with this play on reality and surrealism?
Yeah, I like that passage.
Hmm.
I'm, I sound like a genius in that passage. I think I
Yes.
must have stole it. I must have taken it from somewhere. But yeah, the like the surreal aspects is a great loophole. I didn't. So many of these stories went off into such wild places that I didn't want to commit to whether they were real or not,
Mm.
because the whole thing has the energy of a campfire tale. So when
Yes.
people are telling campfire stories, they exaggerate, and things. The reality of it doesn't mean as much. So there's constantly reminders like that quote that remind you that all bets are off as far as reality,
Hmm.
that they're sort of being manipulated by forces out of their control, which are either some people have taken it very literally that they're like on a fire truck straight to hell, or they're being manipulated by a story that they're stuck in a book. All these are possibilities, and I have no real answer to what's happening to them except that they're being punished for being annoying and terrible. So they're they're lying a lot, and the book is kind of lying. And yeah, I don't know. It's like uh, the surreal aspect of it and all the wild stories that they tell each other are both it sort of becomes that's their way of staying alive, is they're taunted into telling outlandish stories. But also it's like kind of a play on that saying, like whatever happens on this truck stays on the truck, like literally stays on the truck forever.
Yeah.
um which that analogy might have made more sense in my head. But yeah,
No, it made sense. And I
but
really
it's
like,
all loopholes. It's loopholes upon
yeah.
loopholes. What can you get away with?
And when you're reading it, at least the experience I had was like, you're like trying so desperately to piece it together, and then something comes at you, and you're like, nah, that can't have been it. It has to be this. So you're like kind of constantly like, I don't know, playing Sherlock in a way, trying to puzzle it together, but it keeps you guessing for sure in a good way.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, that's what
Yeah.
I was hoping for. Some people get mad.
Yeah.
um they want answers, and
Yeah.
or they want different answers. I give them answers to things that are not important. So
Mm,
things that you might think are important, or the
yeah.
writer or the reader, no, sometimes they don't match.
Yeah.
And some people get real frustrated with this book's lack of answers in some places. But I
Mm.
feel like it answers the important questions. So
Yeah, it does. And I feel like it's a book where you have to, as a reader, just like let go of control, right? Like you're on the bus too in a way, right? You're riding with them, and you can't
yeah,
force the narrative to give you an answer just because you want it. Like you're on that journey with them, you know?
and hopefully, if the answer isn't within reach, if you can be entertaining enough, if
Mm,
in the moment, it's kind of
mhm.
like if you're watching a movie that in your heart is not a good movie, but in the moments it has you, and so it
Yeah.
kind of gets away with not. By the time it's over, it may have won you over just by its. There's a lot of effort to entertain. At least I think I
Totally.
tried to make it funny and kind of ridiculous in ways that people would find enjoyable.
Yeah.
And another loophole to get away with nonsense.
I love that. Yeah. No, it was like shocking and delightful at times and dark and funny. It was all those things. And I think part of that is, again, you've talked about they each have this story, this braided narrative. I'm like so curious about the way you use it to explore their backstories, true or not. They're telling these stories. Was that the plan initially, or did that organically come about?
um, I was just talking to somebody else about that
Mm,
fairly recently. They were because they were surprised at all the not narrative dead ends, hopefully, but all
Yeah.
the detours. And they want to know what was is this a book that got away from you? or is this or is this a short story collection that you've glued together? And it's kind of a little of both, I think. It's
Mm,
originally I had the bees and the cell phone and the prison. That
mm,
whole overlying narrative was the big idea. And I've been
mm,
kicking around that book, trying to write a book about a town with a prison where the prisoners get a hold of all the cell phone numbers and harass everybody, and it makes things fall apart.
mhm,
And the bees, because the town's going under because of the beekeeping industry. And so
mhm,
that was the big idea. And I started working on that in grad school.
mm.
And it just never never could get bigger than, I guess, a novella. It
Sure.
always had enough of a story to I didn't know where to go either before or after the incidents of what if there was somebody growing up in that environment, and would they is it possible for like a little kid to think that that's awesome, that they're getting prank called and harassed by prisoners every day and that the bees are
Yeah.
dying? What kind of terrible child would love that? And could I make that person interesting and sympathetic? So
Yeah.
that was the story I had that I never quite got to work. And then I had another idea in grad school, or when I got out of grad school, when I started working at Santa Clara, and there was a bar right next to our house that had dollar bills all over the walls. And I got
Mm,
obsessed with, why doesn't somebody come in here and steal them? Because that's got to be thousands of dollars. Um, and that's got to be a lot of money to a college student.
yeah.
So, and that one, even though it was supposed to be a little idea, like I can write a little heist story about stealing money off a bar, that got huge and it turned into this giant, again, a novella. So I couldn't really publish that, and I couldn't really publish the other thing. So I thought, I'm gonna just gonna glue them together, and I'm
Yeah.
gonna the bees will be the backstory, and the now will be the heist of the dollar bills. And at some point I thought, this is kind of fun to, because that took care of the main cast of characters. About six people are involved in both of those stories.
Hmm.
Um, and then I thought, well, I should throw in this fire truck idea, because we went on a birthday party on a fire truck, and it had a pool in the back, but it wasn't filled up. You just stood in this hot tub and then drove
Oh.
around Louisville drinking beer. As we did that, I thought, wow, I want to do this, and I want to have this involved with the dollar bill heist. And by that time I just thought, I'm not just going to throw everything into this thing. And so all the, like, some of the short stories, the backstories of the remaining characters, those were written as I was working on this Frankenstein novel.
Sure.
For some of them, I found, because I've been working on so many of the similar themes for so long, that I had a couple short stories, either unpublished ones, ones that I never were able to find a home for. And
Mm,
I thought, well, I've been writing about bees and all this, and movies and cell phones and fire trucks, and it's sprinkled into so many stories, because when you have a book that you can't shake loose, you end up just it sort of just infects everything.
yes. Hmm.
So I was like, all right, I'm bringing everybody home. So everything
Yeah.
that those things got crammed back together. And so yeah, so like I was saying to a friend of mine, that it's less a short story collection masquerading as a novel as it is like the reverse. Um,
Yeah.
but also both, but also neither. I don't know. I don't know. It
It's
probably
its own.
reads a short story collection, but um, the audiobook version of it, I think, solves that, where if it is this sort of extravaganza of people telling stories and different voices telling stories, I think that's the way I kind of imagine it. So it
Mm,
might work better on audio than reading it, but um, that's not for me to say. I have
yeah,
never read the whole thing in a row except to edit it.
sure. It does kind of have the feel of what is that short story collection? Revenge? Do you know what I'm talking about? Where there's like threads
Jim,
where they connect?
the
Huh?
Jim Harrison one.
No. I'm blanking on who it's
Oh,
by. It's a work of
are
translation.
was it Rashomon?
I'll remember it as soon as we're off. But it's this short story collection, and there's like hints and threads throughout, so they're like kind of connected, but kind of not. And
Okay.
there's elements of that in this novel, but I would say that this novel's more connected than just a short story collection. Do you know what I mean? The characters feel more
Yeah.
equally weighted, and they do feel like they're all not around a campfire, but around this pool trapped together telling stories. They do kind of all sit together and they carry
It's fun
equal
to,
weight.
yeah, it's so much fun to trap characters. I don't know if it makes for good reading, but to make me force them to sit
This
on top, literally on
setting,
top of each other.
it's like almost claustrophobic, right? The pool they're in. That was one of my questions too, was so they're trapped on this bus and the pool they're in, it's like full of blood and piss and booze and drugs. Like it is disgusting. Um, and they're all trapped together. And then there's this added element too of not only have you trapped them together to tell their stories, but they're in water. And water is like typically cleansing, like giving life. And this water ain't that. Like this water is not. It ain't good. Um, so tell me more about the setting and like, I mean, you said you were on a party bus, so there's some real life
Yeah,
inspiration.
that's true. There was a real life party bus, but that particular night was it was just it was a birthday party, which was fun, but I couldn't help but thinking the whole time, like, what if this guy never pulled over? What would we even do? We would have to jump out. He wasn't going that fast, but this was in Louisville, and there's a main stretch where all the bars are, and he wanted to go past that main drag a couple times, so he took us past it, but he kind of had to go out into the sticks a little bit, and he had to kind of like spin around and come back through this desolate area, and the party was winding down in the back, and it was kind of like, what if he just kept going, and there's no street lights out here.
Oh my
and,
God.
and so I was thinking, what would the logistics be? You'd have to Could you like Raiders of the Lost Ark style? Could you climb over? Could you get it? Could you get him to stop? Would you jump on? What is the exact speed where you would risk jumping? So I was thinking about all that stuff, and also, of course, like I said, we were standing in the back of a truck, a modified fire engine, which is the exact one in the story. Is that's the He had a
Hmm.
little business card that had the name of that La France pumper from the 30s or whatever, and it wasn't filled up, and I don't think they've ever. It didn't look like it was capable of being filled up with water. It just
Hmm.
maybe at some point they because it was, come to think of it, it was blue. The back was blue, and it seemed to be a tub. It had lights all over it and speakers, and you just stood there. So who
Weird.
knows? But yeah. So the idea of what if this was filled with water? What if it was getting cold? What if he wouldn't pull over? Was just kind of irresistible. And
Hmm.
and also like I was saying, the isolation of characters is so much fun, and the whole Lords of the Fliesy Yellow Jackets thing where people are turning savage, but they're
Hmm.
turning savage, but they've got a whole arena to do it in. And if you were to reduce that arena and restrict them, would it
Hmm.
make them? Would it give you an excuse to go nuts quicker? Like
Yeah.
everybody goes, and that was one of the things that I kind of went back and forth with the edit. Is the editor was pushing back on, are these people acting reasonable? And so I kind of ramped up the alcoholism and the drug use because
Hmm.
that's another loophole. Like if you're
Yeah.
maybe they're not acting right, or maybe their things aren't happening that are reasonable because it's not hallucinations too much of a cheat,
Hmm.
but it's always just enough to. And then again, the leap day thing, the idea is that
Yes.
it's on a day that doesn't happen except once every 4 years. It's kind of spooky.
Hmm.
Not that a leap day is spooky, but the idea that they're untethered from normal things with
Yeah.
every level they're setting means that there's a perfect storm of them being untethered from normalcy, right?
Yep.
So
It makes
yeah,
everything a little bit unreliable, right?
yes, unreliable. That's the word.
Yeah.
All of that
Eh.
nonsense I just said, unreliable, an excuse to be unreliable.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And leap day, yeah. So would you ever ride a party bus on leap day? Would you do that experience again on a leap day, or if you like sworn it off?
I think I knew some. Oh yeah, my friend Mike Chisnievsky. He's also a writer. I would recommend his book.
Okay.
Elephants in the Bedroom is a really good short story collection. There's a lot of surreal stories in there. There's a big influence. One of the stories is about this sort of turf war between miniature golf spots. Like there's this
Okay.
miniature golf battle. It's really good stuff. Anyway, long story short, his birthday is on a leap day. So on Facebook, he'll post about, hey, every 4 years I get to have a birthday, which sounds, first half of your life, that would sound terrible.
Hmm.
Then the second half would sound awesome because then
Yeah, yeah.
you're in dog years then, right? You're not getting any older.
Yeah, totally. That's funny. Was he on the party bus with you or no? When you were
No,
there?
no,
No.
he wasn't. He was back at Bowling Green, BGSU. He was one of my undergrad professors. But
Mm,
yeah, he's great. It's hard to spell his last name, so look for the title, um, either Chicago Stories or Elephants in the Bedroom.
okay.
It's really, really good stuff.
Cool. Yeah. I'll look him up and I'll link them in the description too, if anyone
I would say real
watching
quick,
this.
another one of his stories that
Yeah.
influenced this, even though I didn't realize it till we just started talking about him. He has a story called Street Fishing, where these two guys pull up chairs next to this curb and just start throwing their rods into the gutter and pulling out things that you would never, like, there's no way that any of this
Oh,
stuff could possibly happen, but it's fascinating because it's, magic realism and surreal. And yeah,
yeah.
Street, that's a good one.
Okay, cool. That's so interesting. Was there anything else that inspired the novel, like that you can think of?
Um, I would say I was I am a big Lord of the Flies fan,
Sure.
and it's kind of like when people talk about everybody's first novel is, Portrait of the Young Man or Portrait of the Young Woman as an artist, or wait, Portraits of the Artist as a Young, however that
Yeah.
title goes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But everybody has to get that out of their system. Like their own story comes out first, and then they dabble in other stories. With me, I think I've been writing variations of Lord of the Flies for a long time,
Oh,
constantly putting not just kids, but people in situations and then ramping up and turning on the heat and seeing how they could react in socially unacceptable ways.
yeah.
So, so this is kind of like hopefully getting it out of my system. The
No,
Lord of
that's
the Flies book, just overtly, this one is because that has come up before in comparisons to some stories and stuff. And so now it's just, well, this is it. This is my Lord of the
right.
Flies book. And now I can start to heal.
And so you've talked a little bit about the editing process of this book. How has your experience been working with Podium on it?
Oh, that was good. It was different. They were bigger than the last publisher I worked with, so um, it was a kind of overwhelming. There was a lot of like um, PowerPoints and stuff showing up in
Oh,
my email, like
I
about
did
the
not
company.
expect that.
Yeah, yeah. So that was kind of odd. Uh, and I tried to get an idea of what their formula is for.
Mm,
They seem to have a lot of thought. I think that they were new as far as the way they were branching out. I caught them in a transitional stage. They got famous for publishing The Martian,
oh, okay.
and that was I think that sort of got them cooking. So they
Hmm.
moved in a lot of science fiction, RPG lit areas. I'm not really familiar with those, but they have a lot of audio. They were an audio first publisher at first. So
That's
um,
really interesting.
it was these audiobooks that seem to be immensely popular. I looked up some of their stuff, and
Mhm.
they have like tens of thousands of reviews. And
Wow.
my little book didn't get that, but I think that there is an audience out there that is devouring whatever they're doing, but it's
Wow.
more hardcore sci-fi than I do. But
Sure.
they liked this. They liked this book, and but they did hire somebody, an outside editor, to go back through it. Initially, when I submitted it, they said, oh, this idea, this gimmick is great. It sounds like a Blumhouse horror movie. We
Mm.
want it. And then a few months, and they said, we're probably not going to change much at all. And then a few months later, they said, we're actually going to change this a lot. Can you, or we're going to work with an editor at length and go through it. And I thought, uh-oh,
Oh
they
my
finally read
gosh.
the whole thing. Maybe they read the beginning and where the idea is there. And then they're like, wait a minute, this, where does
Getting
this,
wild.
yeah. So, this guy came in, his name is Wes Miller, and he's worked with I don't know if you've read those Douglas Preston Lincoln Child books. They did the
Mhm.
Relic, sort of it's like sci-fi horror thrillers. um he was the editor on that series. And so yeah, he I met him via Zoom, and he read the book twice, and then he sent me this long letter of what he wanted to see, suggestions where he felt the energy had dipped and how he can keep it moving. And um, the thing that we talked about was, it's a story that's supposedly a truck that's moving very fast. So
Mhm.
that if the book isn't moving very fast, it's going to feel even more inert in those moments. So his big thing was every section, new information has to be introduced, is what he, and I had never worked like that before, where luckily I was introducing so much new stuff. I even told him, I said, apologies in advance for what you're going to read because it's all over the place. And he said, I just edited Chuck Palahniuk's book.
Oh.
Uh, and he's like, you can't out weird me. Don't,
We're good.
calm down. Yeah, like calm down. So yeah, so he read it and he followed it very easily and said
Yeah.
every so often there'd be a moment he'd say, you need to introduce something new here because you're spinning your wheels,
Mm.
literally and figuratively. You're just, it's
Yeah.
not moving forward. So, which was great because then I would say, well, I can't wait to throw a new story. Here's some more crazy shit. I'm just going to jam it right in there. Um, so yeah, I thought it was really good advice. And when it was done, he was, I thought I had to kind of please him, but he said, because I rewrote a big section and sent it to him, and he's like, you don't have to send it. He said, here's my suggestions, take it or leave them. You don't have to like resubmit the book to me, and I don't have to okay it.
Hmm.
My job is done essentially. And I was like,
Wow.
sweet. It's like the best of all worlds.
Yeah.
Somebody comes in, gives you suggestions, and then you decide. Because I'd worked my ass off thinking I've got to rewrite this book and give it to this guy, and hopefully they still want it.
Stamp of approval
Um,
on it.
yeah. And so I rewrote it really quickly, and gave it back to him. He's like, oh, I think you're thinking of, he didn't say this, but I could tell it was like, I think you don't understand the dynamic, which is they hired me to work for you. Um, and
Oh.
once we're done, you know, and so yeah, that was awesome. It was nice. So yeah, that was an experience I had never had before as far as the size of their company, but also this hiring another third party to come in and have some fun with it and flesh it out.
And
I'm
it's
sure they'll
cool.
probably never make that mistake again.
No. It's cool that like when you're hearing you talk about it, it seems like there's just so much trust in your narrative and what you were saying. So it was in your hands. That's really cool.
I think they liked the idea a lot. And
Yeah.
so that idea had to be, there ended up being a lot more time on the bus, time on the truck.
Mm.
The party bus had to be more of a focus. Because I would have spent as much time as I could in the flashback in the town where the bees are dying in the prison.
Yeah.
That was the thing that was the jump started it, but
Sure.
it was a lot of reminders in the margins was get back to the truck, back to the truck. And so if I kept going back to the truck, I had to make something new happen on the truck, which
Interesting.
I think was good advice. I think it makes it more of a real book.
Yeah. And I mean the truck really is like it's our thread line. It keeps all those stories together. So that is interesting. I never would have thought you didn't have that already. That's
There
cool.
was it was there, but it was when it would go back to the truck, it would go back to the truck for like a paragraph
Oh,
because
wow.
like
Yeah.
it was kind of like, I don't know if you've seen Jacob's Ladder, that movie.
Mm-mm.
Where Tim Robbins seems to this. I'm going to spoil it for you though.
Okay.
He seems to be experiencing some sort of demonic pursuit, but
Mm.
he's actually in a coma. So he's on the battlefield. He's been stabbed in Vietnam. So when he opens his eyes in real life, he sees people around him working on him, trying to save him. When he closes them, the world becomes colorful and opens up, and then this fantasy is happening again. So
Whoa.
it was kind of like that initially with the book, where the book would like uh open its eyes, and it was like, this is where we are for real. We're on this truck, and then but only for a second, and then we're going to close our eyes again. And now we're back, back in the heist, or back with the bees, or back with
Mhm.
the guy in the weird factory, or the surfers with the sharks,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
then opens
shark.
his eyes, and oh shit, we're stuck on the truck, and then back to so that's kind of
Yeah.
how the flow of it. And instead, it, he had me give it even time on the truck.
Mm. Yeah, I think that's effective. And it sounds like it balanced the narrative a bit.
Yeah,
Yeah. Cool.
seemed to work.
Seemed to work. So what are you working on next then? What's your next project?
um the main thing I'm working on is, this summer I tried to revise a novel, but kind of where the fire truck book took all this stuff from whatever I'd been thinking about for those couple of years. The last couple of years in California, I've been seeing in a lot of things around our old neighborhood and new neighborhood. So
Mm.
I'm getting kind of Rear Window vibes, where
Mm.
spying on neighbors is trickling into a lot of stuff, either short
Interesting.
stories. I have a couple short stories with that theme. Also, those you ever notice the termite tents they put over houses to fumigate them?
Sure,
Or is
yeah.
it defumigate, or is defumigate bringing the termites back?
I don't know, but I think it's fumigate, right?
Yeah, yeah. So for whatever reason, I got away from the bees, but now termites have showed up in a lot of stuff
Oh,
I'm writing, or at least those tents. Those tents are so
interesting.
weird.
They are
So,
so weird. And what
but as
happens
far
under them?
that's exactly right. What's going on in there? The hell is going
Cool.
on in the tents? So yeah,
Yeah.
but as far as something tangible, Head Cleaner, a novel that I wrote a couple years back, was a COVID casualty where supply chains really
Mm.
hurt its release. So it actually got picked up by Datura, which is a UK publisher, but they're distributed and handled in the US by Penguin Random House.
Cool.
So Penguin Random House is putting out Head Cleaner essentially in the US.
Cool.
That's in January 26th, I think. So it'll get a second chance at life. So I guess that'll be my new book will be Head Cleaner in January, which is more grounded than this, or at least, well, I shouldn't say that. It might be might be frustrating in similar ways, but people seem to enjoy it more because of the 80s, 90s nostalgia stuff is in there. It's got a lot of video store stuff. If you
Oh,
ever
fun.
worked the retail grind, I think is represented well in there, as far as people feel like they're back behind the counter, which
Okay.
I did that for decades. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, retail workers unite and read that book.
That's awesome. Cool. So in January 2026.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah. Cool. Awesome. Well, David, thank you so much. Those are all the
Yeah,
questions I had. Is there anything else you wanted to share about your writing or where we can find you?
I think that should do it. I think we covered a ton of stuff there. That was great.
Yeah.
Um, I've got a website, but it's kind of dead.
Well,
I would say, just if you Google my name, you'll see my books come up at retailers. But as far as the website, it's so old. I gotta update it.
sure.
My online presence is questionable, I will say.
Fair enough. Fair enough. So we can Google you, we can find your books, and we can look for your new one coming out in 2026. Thank you so much, David. This was really fun. It was fun
Yeah.
to pick your brain and learn more.
Thanks again. Thanks for
Yeah,
having me on the show.